Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of Saturday Chat Live here on September 9th, 2023. I hope you all are doing well. If you're returning to the stream, you will notice that things are a bit different. I am outside today. It's a beautiful day here where I am in Ohio. It's cool. It's nice, a little breeze. So I thought, why not stream from outside on the deck? So this is the back of my house, and it's really pretty and everything. So hopefully there won't be too many distractions. I am in a neighborhood that has a lot of dogs. My neighbor has a dog. My neighbor over there has a dog, and there are kids playing. But that's part of being outside and enjoying the outdoors. And I was a kid that played outside and loved pets, so we'll deal with it. Might be a plane that goes overhead, but we'll deal with that as well. So, what is new on the channel, and what can you expect? Well, before I do that, a couple of other tidbits. The next live stream will be on September 30th, which I think is 3 weeks from today. That's because the next week I will be going to Switzerland for 2 weeks for vacation. So we'll do a live stream right before my trip. And then I leave the first week of October and I'll be gone for a couple weeks in Switzerland. So is the next September 30th is the next live stream. Okay. So look out for that. If you haven't noticed, I have been releasing some new content on the channel. It's a new type of content that I am experimenting with. I call it the TLDR series, so too long didn't read. And those are designed really for students or anyone that would like to get up to speed on a particular topic. And they just need like a 3-4 minute overview of the main ideas of a topic. Maybe they're on the go, maybe they're in their car, maybe they're getting ready to study something for class, maybe they're getting ready to review for a test, and they're just really audio with some text on there where I highlight some of the important keywords that are important to know for that topic. So it's a new type of content that I'm experimenting with. There isn't really content like that out there for these topics. So I thought I would try them and kind of see how they do and go from there and see if they're helpful to people. So if you haven't seen those, they look like this. So this is the finance series, and then the stats series looks like this. As you can see, they're very similar in terms of their design and everything. But again, they're just designed for a quick overview, of a certain topic, and you know, quick hitting, to the point, an intro, key points, a real world application, then a conclusion. Okay, so that is sort of what we've been working on there. So I will continue on that series with various topics. So, my interests aren't limited to just statistics necessarily. So I'm interested in business overall and actually learning in general, just general knowledge. So obviously the stats one is one that I'm releasing, every few days. The finance one I'm releasing every few days. And then other business topics will come out sort of over time. And it's kind of like a little mini business school of TLDR videos where students can get that overview of whatever topic they want to get an overview on. Okay. So I'll be releasing those over the next several months. They're very easy to make and quick to make. So it's a good way for me to get new content out that's also beneficial for learners and students. So everyone kind of wins. That does not mean I'm not doing longer form content. It's just another mix of content that I'll be doing, over the next several months, as I've been doing for the past 10 years. All right. So, all right. Obviously, if you're watching in the chat, please let me know where you're watching from. I love knowing where everyone is watching from in the world because many of you watch from overseas, and I'm always interested in where you're watching from. So let me know that. The way this live stream works, if you're new here, you're free to ask any questions or comments, in the live stream chat. I will answer them if I can. Not all questions I can answer, in real time necessarily. But if I can't, you can always contact me on LinkedIn. You can send me a message through my website, which I'll show you here in a few minutes, and we can, touch base then. As long as it's a quick question, I'm not out for hire as a consultant or anything. So If it's a quick question I can answer in a minute or so, I'm more than happy to do that. If it's something that takes, more time, we can have further discussions on how I might be able to help you sort of with that, okay? So that's the best way to reach me if I can't answer your question or comment, whatever else, here live in the live stream. All right. So I will say that this setup outside is a bit different. My camera is kind of off to the side, so if you see me kind of doing this, I'm not being rude or anything. It's the nature of the setup in terms of everything fitting out here outside. All right. Hello. Good to see you. You know what I need to do is take this off. I've had myself covered for what, like 3 minutes. I'm so sorry. So, all right. Yeah. So what I said is before, if I happen to be looking wrong, it's because we're outside and the setup's a bit different. So now that you can see me and not have the overlay on, it makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? All right. Let's see. Go to the comments. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Um, Anuraga, I think I'm saying that correctly. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming by the live stream. I'm glad you stopped by here in our little neck of the woods. Thank you. By the way, if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize. I do my best to try to sound it out, but obviously I'm not familiar with certain names. So if I mispronounce it, I do apologize, and I will do my best to get it right. Okay. All right. Um, Gaurav, hello. It's good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for stopping by. What is that flag behind? That is my LGBTQI flag. Thank you very much. I have on my deck here. So showing support for myself and others. All right. Um, Dr. Kedar, you are making stats easy to learn and interesting. Thanks a lot. Well, you are very welcome. That is why I do it. The whole reason I have the channel is to help people just like you learn and achieve whatever dreams you have, get through school, whatever interests you might have. That's why I do it. The channels like mine, people don't do for the money or the fame or anything like that. I'm not really into those things anyway. So the channel exists for you. That's why it's there. And I do my best to keep up with it the best I can. So if you don't know this, YouTube is definitely not a full-time job for me or anything. I have a career. I have a 9 to 5 job, and I do YouTube when I have the time. That honestly, right now, that means I get up like at 6 in the morning, and then I'll either exercise or if it's an off day, whatever. Then I'll go to like Starbucks by 7, and I'll do like 2 hours of YouTube work before my job begins at like 9:30. Um, and I'm not trying to get a pat on the back, but there are limitations to what I can do in terms of getting content out on the channel with my own schedule. Because then after work, like at 4:30 or 5, I start again, and I'll do another couple hours of YouTube work. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work outside my normal job, and I wish I could do more. But as long as you find it helpful, that's why I do it. So I'm so glad you find it helpful. Mm. Mapavara, playlist is super helpful. I'm from India. I'm glad you find it helpful. Again, everything I just said, I hope that applies to your situation too. I think the key word there is just to be helpful. So my content is not for everyone, and other channels are not for everyone either, and that's fine. But if you find it helpful, then I'm glad, because the most important thing I or anyone else could ever ask of you is your time. Time is the most limited resource we all have. And if I ask for your time, I want to make sure it's worthy of asking for your time. So that's why I try to make as good a content as I can and helpful as content as I can, because I'm asking for the most valuable thing from you, which is your time. All right, here. From India, lots of viewers from India. And I will say I love all the viewers and supporters from India. Without you all, the channel would not be what it is. I think probably around between 20 and 25% of my viewers are actually from India. So I thank you for all your support, and I'm glad you find the channel helpful. All right. Uh, Ashish, good to see you. Hello, hello. Thanks for stopping by. Adarti, hello. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Agara from India. Is that our same? Yes, that's our same Gaurav. You're in here twice. That's cheating. No, I'm just kidding. It's all right. All right. Ashish asked, can you make some videos on regularization and regression? I could. There are lots of topics around that I hope someday to make some videos about. So if you think of some of the more popular machine learning books, some of which I have um, here, so this is one of my favorite machine learning books here. And I meant to bring Josh's book out, but I left it. It's sitting right there. I can see it, but I'm not going to get up to go get it. Um, the StatQuest book, this book. There are a lot of topics in there that I would love to make some videos about someday. It's just a matter of time. So I kind of have to pick and choose how I use the time to make sort of new content. But I know that's a very important topic in machine learning and regression applications, and I hope to someday. I can't tell you when though. I don't know. You know, it's things are a bit cray cray in terms of time. So we'll do the best I can. Um, and I will say I have a lot of ideas for content. So Ashish, what you're saying is definitely part of a bucket of content that I have a lot of ideas for that I would like to do some videos on. There are some other machine learning ideas that I think I'm going to do it in a little bit different way. I kind of know how I would do it. It's just a matter of time, right? So I do YouTube to help you all, but I also do it within my own constraints and limits so I don't burn out and just give up on it, right? Because that doesn't help either one of us. If I try to do too much, given my day job and career and stuff, then I end up burning out, and then I don't want to do it anymore, and then you all won't get the content that might help you from time to time. So I will make as much content as I can within the constraints I have to work with. In addition to the topics you just mentioned, in terms of regularization and regression and other machine learning type topics. I have some data mining type videos that I'd like to do. I've always wanted to do a complete like series on finite mathematics. So when I was at Indiana University, I tutored dozens of students. Probably I lost count. Dozens, that's a general number. Dozens of students in the finite mathematics course because the students had to have the finite math course to get into the business school. So I became like or if not the go-to tutor for finite mathematics at Indiana University in Bloomington. So I have all this content downstairs from that time. I kept all my binders, kept all the problems, kept everything. And I would love to do a series on finite mathematics because it's one of those neglected areas of mathematics, I think, but it's also very important in what we do because of all the matrix algebra and stuff that's involved in machine learning and regression, multiple regression, especially, and stuff like that. So I have enough content ideas to last until my entire head is gray. It's this part's just gray now, but I have enough content to last the whole thing to go gray. So there's never any loss of ideas for content for me. Okay. So yeah, great question. Oop. So yes, machine learning, deep learning playlist, probably more than machine learning uh, type playlist would be a bit more down my alley. I do not claim to be any sort of expert in deep learning aside from just your basic neural network type algorithm stuff. But yeah, machine learning type stuff for sure. All right, good questions. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Hi, Brandon. Big fan. Your videos are useful. Can you suggest any free statistic software which would help with interpretation of results? So interpretation of results. So you're just looking for software that's going to help you interpret the results of whatever output you get, because that's asking a lot from free software, especially. So I'm trying to think. It's not the ones I'm thinking of aren't free, however, but I do think It's either Minitab and or SPSS would give you some interpretation. Like, it would have, like, the summary stats and then any tables it produced, and then the bottom underneath the tables, it would give you, like, 1 or 2 sentences about how to interpret the output that was from that test. Um, there's also an add-in for Excel called XL Stat, the letter XL Stat. We partner with them in my day job at Cengage for some of our titles. It's I think there's a free version. I'm not sure how many features are in that free version, um, but it also provides some interpretation of the output of tests. But other than that, once you're asking a piece of software to, like, do some meaning making interpretation, yeah, it's really hard for them to do that. And of course, your other option is to use generative AI models. So ChatGPT, of course, Bing and or Bard or some of the other maybe open source ones. You could try if you can get a hold of them on Hugging Face or something like that, might be able to help. But as far as giving you the interpretation of the output beyond just the numbers, that's hard. That's a hard one. I don't know if there are any packages for Python or R that might do that. You might want to look into doing some research on that and see if there are any ones that could extend the functionality of R or Python to give you a bit more interpretation. Of course, I will say the whole point of learning these things is for you to learn how to interpret the results. So, you know, the best way to the best interpreter of the results is you through the learning process. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's if you're just talking about interpretation of results for free software, that's going to be hard to find. That's going to be hard to find unless you're using some sort of generative AI where you put in your results and it might be able to do some stuff. Of course, you got to be careful with that because it could be wrong, you know. Okay. Um, let's see. I aspire to be a data scientist, learning more stats. Can you suggest some sources to practice these methods? Like hands-on stuff, your playlists are elaborate. Thanks. So for hands-on stuff, um, there are different resources you can try depending on the level of hands-onness you want. So, like on YouTube, like my videos and other videos, a lot of them you can follow along with. So a lot of my videos have, if you go to my website, I can pull it up if you need to know where it's at. Like if I'm using a data set or some other Excel file or something like that in the video, you can go to my website and download it and follow along. So that's one way to get some hands-on experience is to actually, yeah, if you're on a YouTube video like mine or someone else's where they have a tutorial, check in the description to see if they have a link to the data set or the Jupyter notebook or whatever it is they might have or their GitHub where you can follow along with their examples. So YouTube with outside resources that are made available, that's a great hands-on place. Another place that's if you're talking about free, you know, it's gonna be hard because you're asking for a lot from a free resource. But you didn't say necessarily free, so I won't limit it to free. There are a lot of great Udemy courses that also have a lot of files and stuff you can download to follow along with that course. So some of these Udemy courses are massive, and the instructor or preparer, whoever does it, will often have a set of download files you can download and follow along with and code along with or solve along with or do data viz along with or whatever else, and you can, have both of them up and follow along. So 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 Udemy is a great place if you are familiar with that, and if you just kinda go with the ratings and stuff, I think in the course descriptions, it'll tell you, how much, um what resources are available sort of with that course, so that's another good one. There are many, outside paid services that you can follow along with. So Maven, um, there's all kind of coding camps, data camps, Kaggle, of course, if you want to consider that sort of follow along, you could do that. Data wars is another one. Someone mentioned that in my previous live stream. I haven't. Oh, look at that. Let's check out Data Wars. Um, there's one called Data Wars, which you could check out, and some of these I can pull up if you want. So there are places to get some more hands-on experience with these topics. And the last one I'll add, and I mentioned this in the last live stream, is to use your own data. So collect your own data. We have access to data all around us. And the example I used last live stream was a couple of them. Is I always download my energy usage from my utility company so I can see exactly how much electricity I'm using and when I'm using it, what time of day, what days I use the most, and stuff like that. And I keep track of my energy usage, and then I do some basic analysis on that energy usage, look for patterns, look for trends, look for seasonality, of course, because the energy usage changes based off what season it is, at least where I live. My Fitbit, um, my Fitbit produces a lot of data, so when I exercise, it collects data about, how long I exercise, my heart rate when I exercise, how many zones I'm in, what type it collects a bunch of data that I can download there. I have a lot of sensors in my house in terms of like temperature sensors and stuff like that I can download that data. So there are sources of data you can practice on that you already have available to you that are personal to you, and you could use not only to learn the stats and the machine learning and stuff, but also because it's data that you produce in some way, there's meaning there, right? There's something you can learn about your own life and self there. So there are many, many resources to find data and projects to practice along with. It's just finding the one that sort of works for you and then trying that out. And then try this and try a different one and so on. Of course, the most complicated ones, the ones you will have to pay for, but they have like coding environments or emulators and stuff like that where you can actually code R and or Python in the web browser, but those aren't going to be free unless you have like a trial or something like that. So there are many places out there to find uh, ways to practice this hands-on. So, all right, so we got here. Let's check Data Wars. There we go. So Data Wars was not something I was familiar with until last live stream. So I can pull it up here. One, it just sounds cool. I can share this. Yeah. So here's Data Wars. You can try that. Um, here they have. It looks like they have a Jupyter environment in the browser. Oh, I tell you another one that's good on this note. So everyone knows Andrew and stuff like that for deep learning AI. So deep learning AI has a lot of free courses you can enroll in, and they have the same thing. They'll have like the course content on one side, and then they'll have like a Jupyter environment on the other. And I think you can download the Jupyter notebooks too. Sorry, I got an eyelash. Um, you can download the Jupyter notebooks and follow along that way. So deep learning AI is another good one you can follow along with. But yeah, so here's Data Wars. Not sure how expensive it is. That's not too bad. And 15 months, $15 a month is not too bad. If you're really um into it. So yeah, I mean, I might check it out. Of course, I think that's annual. If you get a monthly, it's yeah, monthly's going to be double, but annual billing is $15 a month, which I think is probably pretty good. So yeah, you can check that out. Mm. All right. Whoa, where'd my screen go? There we go. All right. Okay, I'm gonna grab a drink here because I've been talking really fast. I'm gonna check on the chat. What else y'all want to talk about? Okay. Let's see here. What to do? Well, I kind of can use some betting encoding techniques that could give me the best R squared. In the case of regression approach, What do you mean by encoding techniques? Do you mean like dummy encoding, or what exactly do you mean by in encoding encoding techniques exactly? Um, yeah, and I think if you're looking, you know, if you're looking to maximize your R square and explain the most variance, how you encode the data, um, I mean, it has some effect and importance because you might, get misleading results. But in general, there's some general rules for the way you want to encode data. And it also depends on the software you're using because some of the software programs will do some of the encoding behind the scenes for you. So for example, let's say I'm doing some sort of, I don't know, sales analysis or something like that. And I have a categorical variable that's the regions. Let's just say north, south, east, west. So I have a variable that can have four possibilities: north, south, east, west. Now, there are a couple of ways to handle that sort of variable encoding. You can leave it as is, and the software you're using can do the encoding on the back side sort of on its own, or you could create a series of dummy variables for that region variable. So, you could have a variable called north, and any any record or any observation that has north would have a 1. The rest of them would be 0. You could have south. Those all have ones and zeros. West, ones and zeros. And then depending on the application, but in most cases, there would not be a column for east because east is represented by the reference category. That's where north, south, west are all 0. But nowadays, I tell you, a lot of the times, a lot of modern software, you won't have to do that sort of dummy encoding like that manually. Most of the algorithms and software that we use nowadays will do that sort of encoding for you on the back end, you know. So, um, so that's what I'll say about sort of the way you want to sort of encode your variables. Of course, there are many different types of variables, so it's hard to, it depends on the application that you're using. Some people will take continuous variables and then turn those into bins and sort of, discretize them. I'm sure the accent is there. So there are different ways to do encodings for different variables. Um, I think in general you want to encode your variables in a way that gives you the highest fidelity, the most specificity, because you can always create aggregate variables from there. So the more granular your data is, you can always go from granular to more general, but you really can't go from general to more granular. Okay. So, all right. Yeah. So, like label, yeah. Again, it just depends on the software you're using and the applications and the type of problem that you're trying to solve. One hot encoding is sort of what I mentioned before in terms of ones and zeros. But again, a lot of that nowadays happens behind the scenes in software. You don't necessarily have to do it that way unless you really want to make it explicit, but um that's really up to you if that's what you want to do. Okay. Uh, Mighty Phoenix, can you suggest some sources to learn coding for machine learning AI, maybe Python or other languages? Well, I will say first off, you're going to want to probably stick to Python for those. So, Python is pretty much ruling the world right now because it's so easy to learn. A lot of the generative AI stuff is built on top of Python. It can do so many things. It's a general purpose language, but also a specific, ML, DS, AI language, especially if you're working within in the Anaconda distribution that has everything built into it. So I would probably just stick to Python in that regard. That's my opinion. Um, for the sources to learn that kind of stuff, it's pretty much the same stuff I've mentioned before. So there are a lot of YouTube channels that offer, free content around those things, and some of them have resources you can download. If you look in the description, you can follow along. Um, one good thing, especially about YouTube in this regard, is that because YouTube is something that's always changing in real time, as things change in these disciplines, YouTube tends to keep up with it. So it's very common for something new to be released, and there's a video up about it that day or like the next day. So YouTube is good because it stays current constantly. You can tell, depending on the content, if it's something that's changing very quickly in real time, you can tell whether or not that video is kind of keeping up with that. Like in basic stats, there's no real need for that because basic statistics is basic statistics and it's been basic statistics for 100 years. So that's one thing. But if you're talking about machine learning, AI, and DS and stuff, when things are changing so fast, YouTube is often the best place to stick to because it can keep up with the changes. Because people can throw up a video, in a couple hours and it's current. In terms of more formalized stuff, the things I said before, the Udemy's, the data camps, the programming camps, stuff like that. Um, Trying to think what else I've used. I've used a lot of Udemy courses to learn my coding type stuff. So, oh, we have a flock of birds. Hope you can hear that. So, anyway, those are some of my suggestions, depending on exactly what you want to learn and how much you want to get into the weeds. So, all right, I get a drink here. Hmm. So, if absolute error is 10%, does that mean our accuracy is 90%? I'm not exactly sure how to interpret that question. It depends. When you get into accuracy, accuracy is a term we would use in sort of um, in some sort of algorithm where the outcome variable is binary or discrete, and we have our confusion matrix. And accuracy is one of the measures in the confusion matrix. So, um, yeah, I'd have to see exactly what you're referring to. So, if you're talking about mean absolute error, again, I would have to. It's hard for me to answer this question because I don't know exactly what you're doing. Why does the absolute error percentage change every time I execute the same code? The same set of selected features. Again, without knowing exactly what you're doing and what software you're using, there could be numerous reasons for that. Some algorithms have an element of stochastic randomness to them. That's why often when you see instructors on Udemy or something else, they will often use a seed value. And now we have a massive helicopter. Wow. That's really wow. I was on top of my house. Oh my goodness. Woo! That was crazy. My house was thundering. Um, what we're talking about? That was crazy. Of all times to have, Airwolf going over my house. It was during this live stream. Um, what I'm saying is some of these algorithms have some randomness to them, some stochastic elements to them, and they can change for each iteration that you run the algorithm, unless you set a seed value beforehand. So one thing you can do in this situation, again, depending on what you're doing, I don't know exactly what you're doing, is you can set a seed value, and each time you run the algorithm, it will use that seed value and it will keep the results repeatable. So you often see a video where they'll be like, set seed value 1, 2, 3. And then from that point on, it will use that seed value, and therefore, if the seed value remains the same, the results will be reproducible. So you could try seed values in that sort of context. And that would include any other algorithms like they have cross-validation in them. Of course, when you're doing k-fold cross-validation, the folds are going to be different. They're random each time. So that they're not going to be this, it's not going to be the same data in each fold. So one way you can get around that is to set a seed value in your code, and that way it'll be reproducible each time, assuming the seed value is the same each time. So you could try something like that. But again, a lot of these algorithms have randomness built into how they select the data. So if you're doing like a train test split, or you have a holdout set, or you're doing some sort of validation set, each time you run that algorithm, it's going to choose different data to be in those buckets. And therefore your number is going to be different each time unless you somehow lock it in with like a seed value. So that's my thought on that. Again, it just depends on the context and what you're doing and what software you're using and what the code looks like. There's dozens of factors that could play into that, but that's my 2 cents on that. Ah, all right. Now that we have the air show that is gone. Okay, we're at 40 minutes. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes or so. So if you have any other question, comment, or whatever else, now is the time to put it in the chat. So speak now, or as they say, forever hold your peace. And while I wait for any last minute comments or questions, I'll just kind of reiterate what you can expect over the next little bit from the channel. So I'm going to continue releasing a lot of videos on the TLDR series that are those brief overviews of certain topics designed for students on the go, students that need just a quick overview of a concept. Either they're preparing or reviewing for a test in class, or just need a refresher about a piece of content. That's what they're there for. Okay. Um, so I'll keep releasing those. And I have many ideas for longer form content, again, just depending on my time. So because of my vacation coming up in October and some work travel, I'm not sure exactly when those longer ones will be out. Again, it's just a matter of time, right? But I keep going, I keep trucking along. So so is there any way to handle overfitting in case of predicting actual sales for XGBoost regression problem? Well, any sort of um, similar algorithms can suffer from overfitting issues. So certain algorithms are more prone to overfitting than others. And then, of course, the settings and parameters within those algorithms are things that can be tweaked and tuned to limit overfitting on whatever data you happen to be using. The most common cause of overfitting is including too many variables in the model. And when you do that, of course, especially in a regression type of setting, in most regression type settings, I had to look at more into XGBoost if this is the case with XGBoost. I know what it is. I'm not as familiar with it. But in typical regression, adding more variables will never decrease. Well, it will never decrease the explained variance. It can only increase the explained variance. So, or remain the same. So oftentimes simplifying the model, removing variables that really don't contribute to explained variance is the primary way of reducing or eliminating an overfitting problem, especially in the case of regression. So each one's a bit different. So that's one place I would sort of look, and then see if there are any sort of settings uh, in that algorithm that you can change to somewhat eliminate or penalize certain things if it tends to overfit. So, but yeah, I'd have to look more into the characteristics of XGBoost. I don't use it a whole lot. But the case of making models as simple as possible in most cases it's not always the right thing to do or always the best thing to do, but in most cases in general, making the model and variable set you're working with as simple as possible is a good general strategy for eliminating overfitting, because otherwise you start fitting your model to the noise and all these extraneous things instead of the underlying really thing you're looking at. Okay. All right. Um, well, we've been going about 40 minutes, so I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. So thanks for hanging out with me today here on the live stream outdoors. Pardon the chopper that just went overhead. Um, that's the nature of being outside, but I've no lawnmowers, no dogs, so we've avoided those. But again, we'll be back live either outside or inside on September 30th, so 3 weeks from today. And so please come again with your questions then, and we'll continue the conversation. So thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you find the channel helpful, and I will see you all again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.